Welcome to Rev Up Your Business with Hilda Gan. We are now in season 5, and we've changed the name and the focus of the podcast. Rev Up Your Business is the podcast for small to medium-sized business owners, entrepreneurs, and HR professionals. Each week, we share tips, strategies, and trends on how you can build success in your business. I share my expertise as a people-centric leader in work culture and human resources. My guests share their expertise in human resources, marketing, sales, finance, IT, leadership, and the multiple facets that you need to take care of your business. If you love to learn and want to find out how you can rev up your business, join us. Welcome to another session of Rev Up Your Business. We are doing a 6-part series on business effectiveness and recruiting and retaining your talent. Think about it. It's been 4 years since the pandemic had started. And in that period of time, a lot has changed. And if you coming back to work and thinking, same old, let's get everybody to come back 5 days a week in their workstations, is that really realistic given all the changes that have happened? So Dianne Clark and Neil Cosby and I have created this series. This is part 5 of 6. We've done transformation, the impact of AI, recruiting talent, engaging talent. Today we're focusing on wellness, mental health, and the work culture. And our 6th part is increasing productivity through unified communications. Let me introduce my colleagues. Welcome, Dianne and Neil, for our 5th episode.
It's a pleasure.
It's great to be here, Hilda.
Good. So we're focusing on wellness, mental health, and the work culture. And prior to COVID, people would start talking about mindfulness and mental health, but it's really taken on a different sense of need in the workplace than it did pre-COVID. Neil, why don't you start us off and share some of your thoughts in terms of what mental health and wellness here?
Yes, definitely, Hilda. Like you said, prior to the pandemic, we were seeing definite signs of employers, businesses paying attention to mental health. Employees were requesting things like mindfulness, wellness in the workplace. And again, during COVID, businesses started paying more attention to employee mental health because these were really, really uncharted times, uncharted territory. The shift to working in isolation was tremendous. And then you just had the overall, I'll use the term fear of what's going to happen next. How are we going to get through this? How long is this going to take? So during that phase of time, 2 years, corporations definitely paid a lot more attention to wellness, mental health, also trying to maintain a corporate culture that was more about working virtually as well, and increasing engagement. We did see a lot of burnout during COVID as well. If anecdotally, of course, I had a number of friends that were teachers, principals. After COVID was over, they said, "That's it, I'm done." And I hear that a lot from school boards. Unfortunately, I don't have statistics. What I'm told is it's a pretty significant amount of people that were retirement eligible after COVID that decided, I'm not doing this anymore. This was the last straw.
And it didn't just happen in that industry. I remember going to Minnesota and Minneapolis and trying to get a meal on a Sunday night, and the restaurants were closed. And it suddenly hit me, because of course we weren't going out during much in COVID. And it suddenly hit me that, yeah, people woke up and said, you can't pay me enough to come out and, do this. I don't like doing it and I don't need to do it. I'm going to find some other job, and starting their own company. So there was a lot of exit masses, and I think the stress, was the key. And I think today, companies who were saying, well, that's a perk and only the big corporations can afford wellness, mindfulness sessions or whatever, you can't not afford it now. You need to. And so it doesn't matter that, you're only 20 people, you really need to think about, how do you help your staff stay healthy, stay well balanced. And, interesting statistics. I've got one, and I'm sure you can share some others too. But there was a global survey of 11,000 people in Germany, Australia, France, Japan, the UK, and the United States. And it was done by Future Forum. And they identified 40% in Q3 of 2022. And that was up in terms of like 8% up from prior. So this is the middle of COVID. But what they said was, these burnout results are actually impacting the world in terms of people will be, if they're in burnout, there's going to be worse productivity, 32% worse productivity. And then it's going to affect their ability to focus, 60% worse ability to focus. And those people who are burnt out are 3 times more likely to look for a new job. So these are statistics. No matter what size you are, you can't afford to have people who are not productive, who aren't focused, because it's taking them that much longer to do the same kind of work. So by spending that money, it is well spent.
I would concur wholeheartedly, Hilda. And all of those statistics are important, but the one that really jumps out at me is 3 times more likely to look for a new job. And this is it's a vicious cycle that if, people are feeling burnt out at their current job and they're looking for a job, well, that speaks to the current, labor crisis we're in, where we can't fill jobs that we have, and the applicant pool is not that great. And so, really, to your point about organizations need to pay attention to this, yeah, they really do, just based on these reasons. And I'm pretty sure that a lot of this is about not just dealing with different things, but workload capacity. I think the fact that we can't fill jobs that we have people doing the job of 2 and 3 other people, and that is a big contributor to this burnout. Companies are learning to do more with less people resources, and quite frankly, that's a big consideration of burnout. And then if we look at the higher up the so-called food chain we go, the worse the burnout is. I mean, key decision makers are burning out at a really quick rate. 20% have have worse work-life balance. 40% more work-related stress and anxiety. And there's been a huge drop in satisfaction with the working environment, 15%. So this isn't just about your rank and file, your middle managers. This is from top to bottom that organizations are having to deal with this and look at this and come up with strategies.
And I'm glad you pointed out the executive statistics, because we forget. We think, oh yeah, we got to keep the staff happy. We've got to bring in the staff, but it's happening at the manager, senior, and the executive level. I was talking to someone the other day who's involved in AI and cybersecurity, and what he said was the statistic rate for the suicide rate for executives who have been the target, whose companies have been the target of a cyber attack, is really high. And that scares me. They take that burden of it. I don't know, Dianne, you're our techie person. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Specifically on cyber attacks, I would say in general, technology is the crux of what kind of started a lot of this at the very beginning of the pandemic. There wasn't enough data or analytics being done in order to make appropriate or informed decisions, that when there was the exodus and everyone was working from home, that was supposed to create savings for the companies. It was supposed to be, let's be smart about this, downsize our central locations and offset the savings into investments into our employees. And that would have been, let's get them, supported in their remote locations. Let's get software that's going to help them be productive. A lot don't think of work-life balance as being implicating technology, but Calendars and contacts, managing calendars and contacts is really key to productivity. And it's not just about work, that's about managing in life as well. So, investing in good technology for managing contacts, managing calendars, and also in unified communication. So, you can work with a virtual workforce seamlessly. Those should have been where the savings went into, is to supporting employees in that way. And instead, they weren't. They weren't able to make those decisions quickly, and really be. And the intelligence wasn't there, and now that intelligence is becoming more important. The data-driven decision making is becoming more important, and rightly so. But almost a little too late, because that 20% that they would have gained with everyone in the remote locations now is not coming back. And instead, some leaders want to return to the old normal, which is everyone comes in, and that's really a mixed, getting mixed reviews. But I do think the investment is missing now from employees, and in terms of in all ways, but mainly in technology. From my perspective, I think it could be very helpful.
And I agree. I think there's so many tools out there that can help people get organized, stay focused, see where they are in their project milestones. The days of, day timers, Excel spreadsheets, task reminders on our calendars and things like that. That's just not cutting it anymore. If you're juggling a lot of different variables, because again, you're doing the job of not just yourself, but others, the organization is so critical, and you can get things done more expediently.
And I want to reiterate and emphasize what you just said, and you said it earlier too, Neil, is that people are doing more work than they used to, because when people leave, somebody's got to fill that spot, right? And when there's such a shortage, you end up doing that work until somebody comes, or they say, oh, we don't need to hire. And that's causing more stress. We talked about burnout. We talked about work-life balance. And I know that people who are able to work remotely, or at least in a hybrid model, feel that was something that was really helpful. And if they have to come back into work, that's really going to tip that balance in a way that, again, builds up stress. So it's not just, I know we quoted statistics on stress, on burnout, but it is stress, and stress is that precursor to burnout. And we want to make sure. There's the other aspect of psychological safety. If people are back at work and some people are not creating a healthy environment, when people don't feel safe, that adds another layer of possible stress for people. Any other thoughts on other things that would cause stress in the workplace?
Well, I think, something that we cannot ignore is, other toxic employees. I think that, and certainly what I've noticed in my consulting practice since I pegged March 2022, I think it was March 22nd, here in Ontario. That's where they said, okay, everything's lifted, you can go back to work. That's a simplification of it. And since then, I can tell you the number of investigations, the number of performance issues, the number of terminations that I've been involved in. It's not out of, I don't want to use the term out of control, but it has risen.
It has risen, yes, definitely.
And I think it's a case of, maybe some people don't want to be at work, or there was long festering issues which just rose to the surface when we came back. And I think COVID has exacerbated a lot, and this is no different. So that's part of the answer in terms of wellness and toxic employees. And it's not only about they're unhappy with work. Who else? When we talk about wellness, it's not just about work, but what other stressors do they have in their lives that is going on outside of this? And I mean, wellness to me includes the ability of the employer to provide EAP service, employee assistance program services, because even if it's not work related, you want to support your employees in other things going on in their lives so that they can check that at the door and concentrate on their job.
I remember in the early days of the COVID shutdown, and people are working remotely now. And I remember somebody saying, I don't know if this is going to work. We can't keep an eye on them. How are we going to know that they're doing work? So it was that kind of they're cheating mentality, right? They're gonna just take it easy, and we can't even know whether they're doing it or not. And within 6 months, I'm really worried about the staff. They're working so hard, and some of them look burnt out. And of course, you're doing it remotely. You're a manager, but you don't necessarily know how to handle stressful situations when your staff have it. And so I thought, wow, that's a shift. You went from I don't trust you to, boy, I'm worried about them and they're working hard. And I think we need to give people the benefit of the doubt. People aren't, they 99% of people are not out to cheat people. They're out to do a good job, to have pride in their ownership. And if you give me reasons to believe that I am capable, I'm doing a great job, I'm going to continue to do a great job. But if you treat me like you don't trust me, you're nitpicking at everything I'm going to do, that toxic work culture, that's a stressor. Like, I don't know if I can lift this pen up without you yelling at me. That's not the way life should work. I should feel that sense of flexibility, that sense of trust to do the job that I'm meant to do.
That's slowly going away. I would say the most often I'm asked, the biggest question I'm asked most often is how can I monitor my employees? That's probably the
Going
biggest
back.
software that I'm asked for the most. How can I monitor them? And I do know from personal experience and some who come to me, employees who are now being monitored from an IT department, and every login, every email is logged, and they are watching you from their own location. How productive are you? They can measure and monitor everything in your workday, and I think that's a different stress that we haven't had in the past, that now, you it's Big Brother who's watching you rather than just, doing your job. So I think this is, frightening to, employees, and it creates another stress, and it is creating illness as a result.
That's a good point. I know, and we're talking like 2000, early 2000s, that we had the capability of monitoring people even in the office, and we really never used it. But when we started to have performance issues about people, you say, why is it taking him 10 hours when it really is a 3-hour job? Like, it's not like 10 hours versus 7 hours, like, not nitpicking. It's like, why is it taking, 3 times as long to do something? And when you look at the keystrokes, they're not there. They're
Mm.
not there. And so I guess, speaking from a business owner's perspective, it's not that you want to monitor everybody. It's when you have an issue with somebody that you need more quantifiable evidence that is measurable. And so monitoring keystrokes and monitoring whatever is something that was done. But I want to assure staff, Big Brother's not watching everything. They don't have enough time. But if you are a person of concern, they will start to look at various ways that they can validate the feeling that they're getting. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, the problem is it's hindsight, and in order to be proactive, you have to have that monitoring in place so that you can look back at some point. If you don't have it in place, then there's nothing to look back on.
Yeah.
And yet the prevention of having that software there creates the drama, the anxiety of having it there, even if you're trying to only help selected. It's not like you can come in and say, well, we're going to turn this on in the next 2 weeks to see how your productivity is. I think that would create issues for even those who are not performing well. Yeah.
And I think, if you're going to have a hybrid workforce, a work from home workforce, it's important to talk about expectations, and that could alleviate a lot of this.
Yeah.
And I'm,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if those conversations are happening as much as what they should. So this is what we expect per outcome, on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Quite frankly, I don't think those conversations were happening when people were in the office. So again, this is setting performance objectives, which has now put a focus on, okay, what does our performance management look like in a work from home environment, a hybrid environment? Do we need to do any adjusting? And I think the technology plays a role, absolutely. But hey, make sure people know what they're expected to deliver at the end of the day, the week, and the month.
So, I mean, you talked about expectations, and that's important. People need to know what is expected of them, but it's that communication piece. And I think a lot of managers are not comfortable with having awkward, I won't say difficult, awkward conversations. So they don't even know how to approach something, so they avoid it. And then that creates the uncertainty, and it creates the, well, I expect this, but I'm not getting this, but I don't know how to say anything about it. So it just creates a tension that people, they can maybe be able to feel it, but they don't know what it means. And then that creates more anxiety because you don't know what it is. And so I think, having education for managers to be better performers, be better communication, and not avoid conversations until they become really big issues. These are some of the things that will create a healthier relationship for sure. For sure.
Or the other thing is, instead of monitoring, there's good productivity in the results that you give rather than ongoing minute by minute, hour by hour. If you can work and produce results, as a project management system will tell you, if you document a task as being complete, when you document it as complete, that's under your control, and you can manage your tasks, and every single footprint that you leaves a digital footprint. So that kind of monitoring, to me, is much more controlled by the employee. It's employee driven rather than leadership driven. And same with collaboration. Unified messaging, phone and video conferencing systems are becoming more integrated, so that when you do have meetings, when you have a call, when you text here, there, and everywhere, it's not like that. Those private, you don't have to share the privacy of those, but you can share that, amongst everyone knows when you're available or when you're not available, and having that presence known is often, when I choose to be present, I'm active and available. When I'm not, I'm working on something and being productive, and here's the results that I do. So I don't think it's necessary to have the monitoring, but the results, that the results are shared amongst everyone and visible.
Does it take a bit of a mind shift too, though? Because when you're saying it to me, I'm wondering how many people are thinking they're still watching me versus wow, I get to check this off. So I've done that. This is really great, right? Rather than, are they?
I think it's how you frame it, because I do think the workforce, especially the younger workforce, is really, they love the collaborative, tools.
Yeah.
And I think they get carried away with the way that they can manage their own time, schedule their own time, that they don't dwell on the fact that the monitoring, because there is a difference between monitoring every keystroke or monitoring the output, the results.
Yeah, you're
Like, just
35% done on this, and you're on time, on target. Right?
definitely. And it doesn't have to be the granular pieces. It can be the big milestones. Like, I've worked so much, 25% of this milestone is done. And I think even those small wins in a day, assure a manager that they are working. And if they've been open to their manager, and their manager has said, just let me know when you're open, and then I'll know your light is green, and that means that you're ready for any meeting, and let's have a meeting. Or if you're on a yellow light, then that means that you're busy working on something. If you're on a red light, then you might be away from your desk. And to respect those boundaries, I think, because some of those green lights are on after hours, and employees are working after hours and weekends more than ever now, and they don't get any credit for that. And I do think that empowerment of managing and being sure that they're okay with the outcomes and the results, and if those are always being achieved, then the minute by minute hour, for those types of employees anyways, who work, based on tasks.
I've got a fair number of clients who, are working remotely or in a hybrid model, and their philosophy when I help them with their employee handbook is that, we're flexible. This is the number of hours a week. And we measure by outputs. We don't measure by clocks and the time of day, because in a fluid work-life balance situation, maybe from 2:30 till 4 o'clock, you're busy picking up the kids and getting their snacks, and you're off the grid. But you're back on because you either start earlier in the morning, or you work after supper for that extra hour and a half that you were gone. That's fine, just so long as the outputs are there. I like the one thing that you mentioned about the younger workforce. So the Gen Zs, they like touch points. If you think about when they were growing up, they had so many after school activities, and every after school activity teacher, instructor or whatever gave them feedback. They have been used to feedback all their lives, and it's a norm. And in fact, I remember one study that said the average Gen Z wants and needs 7 touch points. It doesn't mean assessing their ability to do the work. It could just be saying, hi, how's it going? And give me an update on a project. Let's sit down and have a conversation. So it can run the gamut, but it's 7 touch points. So they probably are much more accepting. And then if you look at, again, the generation gap, and generations, and you stereotype, then you're thinking the people who were the early boomers and older, quiet was the word. If you got a word from anybody, it was disciplinary, and you didn't want to hear from anybody. So the idea of having a performance, I call it a review, not evaluation, was like, it was stressful, and people couldn't fall asleep at night because they weren't sure what was going to be said about them. So I can hear bringing that point in, Diane, but yeah, some people see that in a positive framework, for sure. Let's talk about any other strategies, because we've talked about the stress. What should people be doing to help strategy-wise minimize the amount of stress and promote wellness and mental health?
So I think from my perspective, there are several touch points you can do to gauge that. In performance management systems, I'm a big fan of coaching and informal check-ins, if you will. And that's a perfect opportunity to gauge how are you feeling, how are you doing, and so that's one area. Doing engagement surveys, doing quality of work life surveys, that's a big one as well. Some people do them yearly, some people do them more often. That is a big gauge as well. Now, I always say for people that want to do that, because remember, there's different perspectives on how the company is or the organization is. Sometimes those people, most likely sitting in higher positions, think, why would anybody have a problem working here? Not all, but some might. So if you get negative results or results that you're surprised at, don't take it personally. Don't be shocked. But if you're doing it because you're saying you care about your employees, you better be prepared to address it in some aspect.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, it's not going to be taken seriously if you continue doing these things. And it's been shown, these surveys that are put out and no action is perceived to have been taken on the problematic areas, the returns are less and less each year.
Yep.
So,
And then if you're just doing it for a checkbox, they'll
yeah,
see through that after a
yeah.
while. I'll share.
Recognition and rewards is another one. Sorry, Hilda.
Yeah.
Is another area to make sure your people are feeling valued. You know, wellness can be, and you know, I see a lot of companies doing, offering yoga, Zumba, that type of thing. That's great. That's part of it as well. But ask the tough question, which you may not get an answer. Do you feel well resourced in your job? Um, do you feel like you have everything that you can do to do a good job? So,
Yeah, I will also just mention that I do notice remote workforces moving back to the office is that they're asking employees to choose the day that they want to be in the office. And what often happens is they go in the office and they're the only one in the office and no one else is there. And that really that defeats the point as far as I'm concerned to come
Let's just
in.
show up for the sake
Yeah,
of showing
but
up. Right.
I think if leaders, in my opinion, if they picked one day and said, if you can get into the office this day, this is a good day to come in. Everyone's going to be here. They spring to pay for lunch, and during lunchtime, they have someone available who can who employees can go in one-to-one and just express any concerns they might have, whatever it's about, whether it's about their wellness, about their personal, about business, but just to have someone on standing by during that lunch, so that's always the known. If you can't, talk to them this week, then you know that you're going to have an opportunity next week to come in for lunch and to perhaps see that person for 5 minutes and just say, I am having a problem with an employee, or I'm experiencing some stress and anxiety, and I need to know how to deal with it, or what are the resources in the area that I can use.
Yeah.
I think that shows a small investment, but it does several things are accomplished. It's the reward, but it's also the social aspect and the because that's what you need. You need a bit of social with your employees in the office, and the support, showing that you want to support them, offering them the doorway to it.
One of the Rev Up Your Business podcasts that we did earlier in the season focused on optimizing space utilization and doing it from a people-centric perspective. Not saying, okay, this group goes in on Tuesdays, this group goes on Thursdays. No thought to it. When you bring people in, it's not for the sake of them because you want to see them in the office. Find where like teams might need to collaborate in person together. Pick that day, not every Thursday. Pick the reason for it and have it, or say, okay, next month on this day, we want everybody in. And the reason for is team building, camaraderie. Build your team meetings around this day, but between 12 and 2, we're going to have a get together. So make them come back with a purpose so that they see why they're here, not because I had to show up and this one day I'm by myself kind of thing. So if you get a chance, it's with Erica McKay, and we talk about people-centric space optimization. Really, it talks about return on investment too. So you need to do that. I would also add creating that we culture. People think about, toxic work cultures, but if you have a mindset of creating a we culture, not an us versus them, that's what helps foster a healthy work culture and will go a long way for wellness and health. And I use that phrase because that's what came to my mind when my husband and I put our company's name forward and became recognized as best workplaces in Canada. And for those who don't know, but for those who know, we were top 10 twice. And what I recognized was I always thought, well, we have 3 weeks vacation. We have all these perks that the big top companies had. I thought, well, we got that. Let's go and put our names forward. And when we were doing it the first time, we were number 9. And it comes with this huge spreadsheet because it's a survey-based thing. And we looked at the survey and there were 2 lines that were red. So, of course, we zeroed in on the red. And the 2 things were, number 1, they didn't get regular performance reviews. And number 2, their salaries didn't seem to relate to the performance reviews. And we understood why, because we believe people needed to get their anniversary increase on their anniversary. And we also knew our managers did not timely submitted that. So we worked on making sure managers timely did their evaluations, and then the salary increase followed that. And those 2 changes resulted in us moving to number 4. And what we found was companies who are in the top 20, 30, whatever, their gap between what the staff perceive as the company and the managers perceive as the company were closer together, that we culture. So I wanted to share that I don't usually go into that kind of detail, but that's what you need to do when you get these engagements. Respond to them, make them evident that there is a change, and we were recognized by our staff that we did something about those 2 red areas. So they went well. Any other thoughts before we kind of tell people how they can get a hold of us?
I think, we hear a lot about this. We hear a lot about taking care of employees, and I don't think organizations can ignore it. And more to your point that you said earlier, Hilda, doesn't matter how small, how big you are, you can fit this within your overall philosophy, your overall organizational culture that you want to put forward. And when you have a culture that says, yeah, they care about us, that's the highest form of employee branding you can ever have. And that's word of mouth, and that spreads quickly.
It's such an important topic, and I did have some conversations with some top HR professionals of North American, the bank system, and we chatted at length about work-life balance and having a bank, much like, added to the benefits package and being really offered as part of compensation, to have work-life balance really identified within the compensation, and what kinds of things you can offer in terms of being creative with work-life balance. And that might be you get to work Saturdays and you get Mondays off, or it's you just work with employees where they're at, if they have young families, if they if they, for whatever is they're driven by, but to build something into the compensation for that is coming and becoming more and more important, I think.
Thank you. And I will just add, we need to shift our mindset to more people-centric workplaces. If you think of people as a commodity, do you think they feel valued? You think they want to stay? They went through COVID. They're more resilient now. They know that there are things out there in the world other than this job, especially if you don't treat me with respect and value me. I want to stay in a place where I love what I do and I love where I work. So shift your mindset. If you want to be more profitable, if you want to find employees and have employees stay, then you need to think about a people-centric workplace. And there are proven statistics that you'll actually have more profit and more revenue when you do that. So thank you very much. Diane, I'm going to let you share with people how to get a hold of us, because I think they've heard a lot about what we do and what we can do. So if you're interested in learning more about us, Diane, share.
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Hilda. For sure. We're dealing more and more with organizational effectiveness and all things to do with performance and technology and having appropriate measures in place, getting data-driven decision making, getting intelligence to operate effectively. You can look at our website, which is trendspire.com, or email us at effectiveness@trendspire.com, and we will make sure that you're directed to the right channel or resource, and happy to help.
Well, thank you to the two of you. This is episode 5, and Diane dropped little teasers about unified communication, which really helps productivity, and there is a good return on investment. So join us for our next episode. Thank you again, Diane. Thank you, Neil, for joining me today. And again, thanks to those who are listening or are looking at the podcast. Give it a thumbs up. Subscribe. There are so many topics that we share every week to help you build that business, to rev up your business. And whether you're an HR professional, a business owner, or an entrepreneur, there's so many pieces of information that can be helpful in your journey. Thanks a lot and have a great day. Thank you for tuning in to Rev Up Your Business with Hilda Gan. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast on YouTube and Spotify to stay up to date with all of our latest episodes. For more HR tips, strategies, and to learn how you can create a people-centric workplace, visit our website at peoplebrightconsulting.com.